What's up? I'm the Empathetic Chicken, and today I wanted to talk about why I chose not to be a therapist. So, for anybody who doesn't know, I have a degree in marriage and family therapy, and I just graduated in like May, I think. It's been a minute. Anyway, I've mentioned it on my other videos, but I just kind of wanted to go into kind of the reason why I didn't pursue that as a career after I spent like 3 years on a master's degree. But anyways, I've been wanting to make this video for a while. I just didn't know how to go about doing it because I feel like my views they could be considered offensive to some people, but I mean, that's not my intention. But I just know like they're not like the popular opinion or whatever, so I've been kind of on the fence about how to like express my feelings on the matter. So pretty much I just went through the program like I went into it not really knowing what I was getting into, and I just kind of had this vague idea of like, oh, I'll get to help people, but I didn't really understand like fully what that meant, I guess. And then the longer I was in the program, like I started feeling like this resistance to the whole idea of being a therapist, just because of the whole like authority that comes with that. Because I didn't like the idea of being like over someone else's like well-being or whatever. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe it's making sense. But I just don't like the idea that people have to go to someone else and then them tell them like, give them like the verdict, like, well, you're nuts or you're not nuts. You know what I mean? I know it's not that like simplified, but it just felt that way to me. Like people usually go to like doctors and therapists and stuff when there's something like they feel like there's something wrong with them, and they feel like the other person can like tell them what's wrong and fix it. So I don't know. I like just the more that I went through the program, I realized that like maybe people weren't broken. Like I don't know. Like I went into it kind of like self-servingly, or if that's even a word or whatever, because I was wanting to kind of know like, well, what's the secret? Like, what do these people know? Like I need to know so I can like help myself, because I'm like struggling. And then like it's a bonus that I get to help other people. Like when I learn whatever, like the magic thing, like the cure or whatever, like I thought I was gonna learn like a secret to like being like a normal, like happy person or whatever. I don't know. Like it sounds really stupid, like the way I'm saying it, I feel like, but I don't know how else to say it. So anyways, I just had a very like flawed view of myself at the time. But then like I learned everything I learned and just started to switch that view up and realize it was never really me. It was just like how I learned to think about my problems. And I don't know, like let me just start. I just have views that like conflict with how we view having issues. Like I feel like in our society we put a lot of like blame and responsibility on like the individual, and just say like, oh, it's your problem, like you're the sick one, when it's just kind of like a combination of like everything. Like there's just things that you can't even like measure have an effect on someone's like mood or like how they go about life. I mean, you just can't like apply this like cookie cutter solution to everybody's problems. And that's a problem I have with like mental illness diagnoses, because I'm like, you don't know everyone's situation. Like you've studied, like someone has studied like a specific set of like symptoms and decided to call those symptoms like this thing, like this umbrella term, like for whatever the experience is. It's just like a simplified version of of someone's experience. Like, it's not guaranteed. Like, you can list off these symptoms, and like, yeah, maybe somebody like identifies with some of them. Like, yeah, I have that. But like, then something else you're dealing with might not be on the list, or like, it's just, I don't know, you just can't boil down everything into like this neat little category that fits like every single person. Like, as much as they try, I just don't agree with it. And like, the whole idea of like mental illness is like a deficit. Like, it puts this like label on a person that there's something wrong with them and they're not like normal. When like, I don't agree with like the idea of normal either, because it's just like this made up thing. Like, who is like the original normal person? Like, it's just, I mean, I guess it would be whatever's like the most common becomes normal, but that doesn't mean that that's like the only way to be. But I mean, that's the thing. I just feel like everybody's different, but we try to act like we're the same, and that's what causes the problems, because when we realize we're not like normal, then we feel like we got a problem, because like, we're supposed to be normal, right? Like, everybody else supposedly is like this, so why can't I like fit the mold? But really, like, the mold is just like made up. Like, a certain set of people just agreed at one time, like, this is how it's supposed to be. Like, it's kind of like in your family. Like, there's certain things that you probably do with your family that are like normal to you, but then like, if you were to go to someone else's family and like spend time with them, you'd be like, oh, well, we don't do this at my place. I'm like, does that make y'all like wrong? Like, either one of y'all? Like, no. It just makes you different, like, depending on what you've been exposed to. And I don't know, it's just like a combination of like all the influences like that have ever like affected you, or like the people you know. It's just like it's too vast to even like talk about. But like, the problem with problems is people just try to like act like they're so simple when they're not. Like, even like the term mental health, it like creates this picture of like the picture of health. Like, what is like the desired stability, or whatever you want to call it, like mental stability? What does that even look like? I mean, I guess you could say it's like happiness, but I mean, that's not realistic in my opinion, because like, happiness is not like a constant. I mean, it's nice to feel happy and like, you know, all good, like no issues, but like, you can't really base your whole life on like chasing that feeling, because I mean, it's just not realistic. Like, there's two sides to the coin. Excuse me. I ate that food. Now there's got to be excrement. Collect myself. Yeah, so I feel like we just have created these false standards for health and for like normality and all that, when it was really just one person's idea that kind of multiplied, because like, they got more people to agree, like, okay, this is what's normal. And then like, other people who don't fit that are kind of just supposed to be like, they're supposed to either conform or like, I guess, just be the weirdos. Yeah, so anytime you're different than like the most widespread like view of how things should be, then that usually is a red flag for like, oh, something's wrong, like, you're the problem. I think another thing that gets on my nerves about like mainstream mental health is just like the idea that you go to someone else and they can tell you what your problem is and how to fix it, when they don't really know you. Like, I don't think that anybody can tell you like how to live your life if they don't know your situation. I mean, they could tell you, but like, it's not guaranteed to work. Like, I just don't agree with like statistics and like those, what is the thing? What are the things called? dang. The things where they do the little question check off box thingy. Oh my God, assessment, that's what it is. Like, I remember when I was trying to find jobs in mental health, like, they would always say a requirement was to, like, perform assessments on people, and I don't agree with that, because, like, if you have a piece of paper in front of you with, like, these prescribed questions, like, they might not, it's kind of like when you take, like, a survey or something, and, like those little job things. I feel like I'm jumping around, but, like, when you're trying to apply for a job online, and, like, they have you do this little questionnaire that, like, questions your, like, judgment, I guess, and your character. But, like, people who can, like, outthink the questions, it's like they don't account for, like, other possibilities, and you just feel limited. And, like, it kind of feels like a trick question in a sense, because, like, you're not allowed to, like, fill in the blank, like, the other gaps in the question or whatever. So that makes sense. But, like, with an assessment, like, they can ask you all these questions and then, like, judge you, like, according to whatever your answer is. But it's like they're looking for, like, a specific thing, and that thing might not be what you're experiencing, and it might not even be relevant. Like, so why treat, like, a diverse, like, person with, like, such a limited view? Like, I just don't talk to people. Like, don't just ask them, like, cookie cutter questions. And that's why I like my program so much, because it's like, that's all we did was just, like, talk to people. And we didn't have, like, this whole problem-centered approach to talking to people. It was just like, you're a person, let me learn your context, like, let's talk about it, let's understand, like, your influences and how you've come to, like, believe what you believe about yourself and your life. And then let's just kind of, like, unpack that and see what we can do. Because, I mean, things are questionable even if they feel like they're not. Like, I think that's another issue, is we always want to, like, act like stuff's permanent, and when it's really not. Like, because a lot of times people come into therapy because, like, they're having, like, a little crisis, and they're just like, this is not how things should be. Like, I don't want to be like this no more. So, like, they freak out and feel like they're stuck, when really, like, if time passed, I'm sure, like, they would change, because, I mean, just change is inevitable. But, like, in the moment, stuff feels, like, real. And so, like, if we, like, focus on that too much, it feels, like, even more real, if that makes sense. It's another thing that I think plays a role. Like, we all come from different backgrounds, and, like, we notice different things because of our background. So, like, what feels like a problem to one person might not feel like anything to another. And so, like, when you go to, like, a therapist or a psychiatrist or whatever, like, they're looking through their own lens, which, I mean, it just depends on what's informed that. Like, they have limitations just like you do, like, in what they've experienced and what they know. So it's like, why do we trust other people with making those kind of calls, like, on our well-being? Because, like, they can only know so much. Like, they only see, like, they're looking for a specific thing. Like, a doctor is looking for, like, an illness. Like, if you go to the doctor, he ain't gonna look to, like, to see where you're healthy. I mean, he's trying to find something that's wrong, you know what I mean? So it's just like the lens that you're looking through affects, like, what you find, if that makes sense. So if you're going to, like, these therapists, like, hoping to find, like, what's wrong with you, you're kind of, like, reinforcing the idea that you're, like, screwed up. Because, I mean, that was another thing that really, like, messed with me. Like, I didn't really fully grasp it until afterwards, but, like, the fact that I would be going into, like, a business that, like, profits off of people's pain. And I know, like, it feels like, I guess it's not all bad, because, like, everything has, like, two sides, you know. Like, on one hand, you're, like, helping people, but it's kind of like helping them depends on them, like, being in pain to begin with. So it's just kind of like, I don't know, I didn't didn't really anticipate the whole like pain part of it as much. Like, I mean, I was just focused on like helping people, but then just kind of understanding more about what it means, like when someone comes to you like as a therapist, like they almost think, I mean, I'm just generalizing, I'm not saying every single person, but like some people like just think that like a therapist is like this expert and they know everything. Like this one couple I had came in and they were just like, can you tell us if like our heads are messed up? And I was just like, no, I mean, I don't have that expertise or authority, like, and I don't really know like who would have that. I mean, unless you're talking about like physical, you know, like brain damage or something, like, I don't know, man, like I'm not that level, you know. So it's just like the amount of trust that people put in to therapists and stuff, it just kind of bothers me a little bit. Which, I mean, that's the thing, I'm not naysaying like therapy and asking for help, and like I'm good with talk therapy. Like I have been a talk therapist, and I've been in talk therapy like as a client, so like I have no quarrels with that. But I mean, I've only experienced one type of therapy, and that was family therapy, so like that's another limitation that I have to consider. Like I don't know what other people experience in other forms of therapy, so like I'm just a person, man. Like I have no, like I can only operate from my viewpoint and my like limited understanding, like everybody else can. So I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with like needing help or wanting like somebody to listen or to talk to, but I just don't like people trusting like other people to tell them if they're like flawed or sick or messed up, you know what I mean? With the whole like blaming ourselves, I feel like another aspect of that is like it's easier to like put the blame on like the individual than to actually like look at like things as a whole and how like everything kind of like contributes to our individual experiences. I mean, it's not isolated, like we're not isolated like as much as like we are like independent geared like in Western society. Like it's not like we can't help but be influenced and influence other people. I've noticed lately though, like this is kind of like cool and at the same time I have issues with it. But like it's becoming more acceptable to like talk about mental illness and struggling, which I'm all for, like acknowledging like the struggle, because I mean, yeah, that's part of life. But there's another part of that I feel like resistance to, because it's almost feeling like it feels like it reinforces that blame thing. Like, yeah, like I struggle, but it's not just like you struggling, it's like the whole, you know what I mean? Like there's a reason you're struggling, and it's not because there's something wrong with you. Like even though you might have a diagnosis, like that doesn't mean that's like declaring that you're like not good enough or that you're like flawed or whatever. I don't really have a lot of faith in diagnosis because it is such like a limited criteria. Like I don't think that you can just boil down everybody's experience into like these categories and just apply them to people, like just because you've studied some people who kind of have those symptoms. Like you just can't put like you can't simplify things that much. Like you don't know, and a lot of times like stuff's not permanent. Like you might be suffering because like you lost someone, or like you going through like a breakup, or like your pet died or something. Like you never know. Like people just suffer. Like it's part of life. I just don't understand why we gotta make it an issue if somebody's like having a hard time. I mean, yeah, let's care about it, let's help them, but I don't think helping them means that we have to like give them this label of sickness. Like can they just feel what they feel? And, like, they be okay with that? I just feel like a lot of times people just need somebody to be there to, like, witness what they're feeling, you know, just some support. Like, they don't need this label to carry around for the rest of their lives, because, like, they might feel different in, like, the next month. Like, you just never know. Like, I ain't worried about the same kind of things that I was worried about, like, a year or two ago. I mean, some things, yeah. Like, but not every single issue that I've dealt with in my life, like, is lingering around. Like, it's just not the way things work. Like, life progresses, you know? So I don't understand why we gotta, like, fixate on problems or, like, what's wrong with us. Yeah, I think we're just not very good at sitting with discomfort. And I don't know what that's about, but I mean, probably because it sucks. Like, it really does. Like, nobody wants to, like, feel horrible. But, I mean, maybe some people do. I don't know. I'm limited in my understanding, man. I don't know things. But I would assume that feeling pain isn't really that fun. Unless you're trying to, like, transcend it, like some people be doing with, like, the little needles. Sorry, I just watched that movie Strangeland by Dee Snider, and now I'm, like, questioning my own assumptions, which is good. You should always question your assumptions, because you never know. Well, you might think you know, but you don't know. Like, that's the thing. We all trying to walk around, or at least, like, the little elitist people, like, in the psychiatry and all that. They try to act like they know, but they don't know. Like, you can ask anybody, probably, who's seen a psychiatrist. They probably, like, see him for, like, maybe 10 minutes, and then that's it. Like, you can't get to know somebody's whole life in 10 minutes. But I guess I need to say, like, I guess you'd say, like, if you want to use positive and negative, I have a negative view of, like, psychiatry and just, like, mainstream mental health, because, like, they didn't really do much for, like, my family. Like, my mom's been in and out of the system for, like, her whole life, and she had an experience with her psychiatrist where, like, she kept telling them, like, she wasn't doing good, and they just kept, like, upping her medicine until she overdosed. So I'm just kind of like, well, that ain't really help if you're just trying to, like, subdue the problem. Just, like, stick a band-aid on it and just shut up and get out of my office so I can get paid. You know what I mean? I just don't. I'm not saying that these people are, like, malicious. Like, I don't really think that people are ever, like, trying. Like, I feel like the people in the mental health, like, they're hopefully, like, they're really trying to help, and, like, they feel like they're making a difference. But I'm just, like, questioning, like, the whole foundation of, like, what, like, these attempts to help is, like, you know what I mean? Like, what they're built on. Like, I guess that would be a foundation. I don't know. I just feel like there's more to it than, like, maybe meets the eye. Like, maybe we ain't understanding exactly what we're doing when we're in one of these kind of situations. Because, like, for me, I just wasn't comfortable being in that position of, like, authority. So I'd rather not participate, which kind of feels like a cop-out at times. But at the same time, it's almost like not participating is still participating in, like, a better way to me, like, because I'm not contributing to the same, like, broken system that reinforces, like, sickness on people and, like, makes difference like a problem. And I feel like I've found other ways to, like, use what I learned. Like, my Oracle deck is kind of like my contribution as a therapist. No, I'm not really a therapist, but, like, it's what came out of my training to be a therapist. Like, I use that in a different way, and it can still, like, influence people, like, even if I'm not, like, sitting in a room with them and talking to them. Like, I'm hoping that by using the cards, like, and the messages behind them, like, it'll still get the point across, like, that I want to help people, and I just want people to, like, believe in themselves more and stop feeling like they're the problem. Because, I mean, it's really a matter of, like, how we're thinking about things and, like, judging ourselves, you know? We don't need to do all that. Like, just because someone else said something doesn't make it true for us. Like, just because someone else thinks like you got a problem doesn't necessarily mean that you do. I mean, as long as you ain't like hurting nobody, you know what I mean? But I mean, that's relative too. Like, you could be hurting somebody and you don't feel like you're hurting anybody. So like, you just can't, like, things just aren't as like simple. Like, they are and they aren't. Like, I don't know how to explain that, but like, it's just not, I don't know, it's not clear cut. I think there's always going to be like gaps in the argument, like, because there's always exceptions. Like, there's people that do like harmful things. I mean, I wouldn't even go as far as to say that like they're evil or whatever, but like if something different definitely like happened to where they would do those kind of things, like murder or something, like, I don't know. But on the same hand, like, usually there's a reason behind it. So I mean, I'm not saying it's justified to like hurt somebody. I'm just saying, like, things don't happen in a vacuum. And a lot of times it's like not just that person, like it's all the influences that they've had that led up to kind of like their actions, you know? It's just like a complicated situation. But I'm more speaking to like less like severe displays of like behavior, I guess. Like as long as nobody hurt, that's cool with me. Like, be different. I ain't trying to promote like no harmful behavior or anything. But I just think there's room for like people to be different without that being a problem. This is just me like thinking out loud, but I feel like diagnosis and like labels can be like a comforting thing because it gives us like an explanation for our misery, I guess, like if you want to call it misery. Like, people like to know what's going on, like they need meaning to like feel at peace, I guess, like with stuff, because I mean, if you don't understand stuff, it kind of feels more like unbearable sometimes. But like if you do go get a diagnosis or something, like get like another opinion, then it kind of just gives you something to think about, like some way to explain like what you're going through. Which I get that. Like, I'm not against, that's the thing, I'm really not against like people who accept diagnoses or however you want to say it. Like, as long as, I don't know, it's like this weird thing where like I want people to have the freedom to do what works for them. Like, I'm not trying to shut nobody down, like who wants to take medication, although like I'm personally not on that fence. Like, or in that camp, I don't really agree with that whole thing. But at the same time, like, I've heard that it works for certain people, and I guess it just depends on like what you're wanting out of it. I guess I just wouldn't want somebody to take medicine or like take a diagnosis because they like really felt like they were that bad. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems kind of sad that like we should have to feel like there's something that wrong with us that we have to have like this defining label that just like makes us feel like we're never gonna be like normal or acceptable. I just don't like that, and I'm probably just like influencing this whole conversation with my own bias because it's inevitable because I'm me. But I don't know. I don't like that. I just feel like we're not inherently flawed. We're just us. And people have different ideas about what's acceptable and what's not. And then when those clash, it causes strife. You know what I mean? Like, people just gotta argue about it instead of just accepting that things are different for everybody. Yeah, so it's more like not necessarily that there's something wrong with us, but just like the idea that something's wrong with us is a real issue. You know what I mean? I feel like I've already said this somewhere before, probably in a reading, but I feel like it could stand to be said again. It's usually like how we're thinking about something that affects like our experience. Yeah, I guess I just want people to be more like aware of what they accept when it comes to like judging themselves and other people even. Like, you really don't have to be so like closed-minded and accept just anybody's opinions. Like, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to be different. It's okay to burp when you feel the need, even though some people would say that's rude. Other people would just let it out, man. So yeah, pretty much I have chosen not to be a therapist because every job that I look into says that assessments are required. Excuse me. So I just don't want to be put in a position to do assessments on people because I just feel like that's very limiting and boxes people in, and you can't capture someone's life by reading out questions and giving them like limited options to how they define their experience. So I would rather not even like try, which I feel like some people might seem like stupid because I'm just like refusing to help. Like one thing, like an issue I had, one of my supervisors when I was in my program, like I was trying to express some of this to her, and she was saying that I was just like refusing to play the game. Like, I mean, she was speaking in like metaphor obviously, but like she was like, I was just talking about like I just feel like I want to change the rules because I don't like the way things are set up. And she's like, well, you don't get a say in changing the rules if you don't play the game. So I just kind of took offense to that and was like, I don't think so. Like, if something's not fair, then I don't have to play by the rules, you know what I mean? Like, I can make my own. So that's kind of how I feel like I'm doing now. Like, it is probably like sounds rebellious and naive or whatever you want to call it. Like, I ain't trying to be like rude or nothing, but I just think it's not that, like, I'm not gonna limit myself just because like the expected route is like one way. Like, I can find a way to use what I've learned. Like, I don't have to go the traditional route, get licensed, play ball. Like, that's the thing that just irritates me. It's like we have to sacrifice our views to do the same things that people have been doing forever. Like, that's the thing with my program that was so cool, is it was like new, like kind of like a baby program, like in the making, you know, new ways of thinking. But it's just like hard to get that to grow when nobody wants to be open-minded and like they want to stick to like the traditional like deficit-centered understanding of like people's issues, or I don't even want to say people's issues, but people's emotions, like their experiences. So anyway, it just felt like a battle that I was not going to win. But at the same time, I was winning it by not even trying. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I get to define my own path. And like, I'm not going to accept the limitations that the world is trying to place on me. Which I sound like I'm talking like I don't want to seem like I'm trying to say that like the world is like some mean like bully or something trying to hold me down. But just like the current way that things are set up doesn't fit for me, so I'm not gonna try to fit myself where I'm not fitting. Like, I'm not gonna try to fit what's that saying, square in a round hole or whatever you call it. I'm just not gonna even bother, and instead I'm gonna figure out some other way, which, I mean, so far that's just involved me working like a job related, like not related at all to mental health or like therapy or anything. And I've had to like come to terms with kind of like the repercussions of that, like just wondering, like, well, am I doing the right thing? Like, am I wasting the knowledge I've gained that I could be using to, like, help people? But I don't feel like I am, because, like, this channel is kind of a way for me to still use what I've learned and kind of put it out there. And I mean, I don't have very much of a reach yet, but I just feel like you put your intention out there, somebody will take hold. Like, somebody out there needs to hear this. And that's kind of like what helps me sleep better at night, knowing that I'm not just like another player in the game of holding other people down and elevating other people. So I feel pretty good about that. I don't think there's like just one way to help people, or like, I don't know, I just think there's so many possibilities. And just because I'm not going the way that everybody expects me to doesn't mean that I won't use what I've learned or benefit someone out there. Like, you never know, like, something small can carry on, you know what I mean? Like, you just never know. So just, like, keep doing you, and I'm gonna do me, and we gonna help people and ourselves by not conforming and, like, killing our souls trying to be something that we're not. Alright. I feel like that could pretty much sum up what I wanted to say. And just as a little disclaimer, like, just wanted to say, if I offended anybody, I apologize. I really did not mean to. And I'm open for, like, any kind of conversation about these things. And at the same time, I'm not, like, discrediting anybody who is more, like, okay with the mainstream understanding of mental health and mental illness. Like, I'm not trying to call you out or say you're stupid or anything at all. Like, I'm really not. Like, whatever works. I think people need options. Like, as long as we have, like, a variety of ways to, like, understand our experience, I'm cool with that. Like, I just have a problem with, like, limiting our choices. Like, I don't want people to just have to feel like they gotta accept the label of sick, like, to have a different experience. You know what I mean? Like, just because their experience is different from somebody else's, I don't think that should be necessarily labeled as a problem. So yeah, and then I'm sure, like, when I watch this back, I'll think of some stuff that I wish I would have said. But I mean, there's always more videos, and my understanding is gonna continue to evolve anyway, because I mean, life changes, like I said. So this is where I'm at right now. It could be different tomorrow. But in closing, I found this little passage out of this book that I want to read, that I felt like kind of alludes to some of the stuff I was talking about. And I don't think I want to go too much into, like, my interpretation of what it means, just because I want to leave it up to you guys. But I feel like it's relevant, so I'm going to read it. It's called Flight from the Shadow. It says, "There was a man who was so disturbed by the sight of his own shadow and so displeased with his own footsteps that he determined to get rid of both. The method he hit upon was to run away from them. So he got up and ran, but every time he put his foot down there was another step, while his shadow kept up with him without the slightest difficulty. He attributed his failure to the fact that he was not running fast enough, so he ran faster and faster without stopping until he finally dropped dead. He failed to realize that if he merely stepped into the shade, his shadow would vanish, and if he sat down and stayed still, there would be no more footsteps."